Okay, we are live. Yeah. So new video. Camera. You can see my face. See all these buzzwords up there in that way. New video. Thought I would maybe teach some things. I know there's lots of investing videos and people have some cool takes of what cards they like, what sets to buy. Tracking prices, things like that. So doing something different, maybe just teach you a few things in economics, very basic stuff. If you have a business degree, you can like the video and then get out of here because it's going to be boring for you. If you're an econ major or you have a master's in economics or something, you can roll your eyes into the back of your head because I probably am not explaining this the best way. But super basic surface level stuff for people so that they know some of these words that people are throwing around and maybe some principles you can take from this and use it in your own life, in your own business, and investing and Pokemon investing, collecting, things like that. So let's just get into it. Call it Pokenomics. I'm sure someone has that handle on YouTube already, but I don't know. I have no original thoughts in my brain. So we're going to go demand, supply, market equilibrium, market forces, and maybe wrap it up into how we use this information. Demand. Okay. It's pretty, I think everyone kind of understands demand. It's consumers' desire to pay for a good or service, right? So, for examples, booster boxes, grading, singles, stuff like that. So there's usually a dollar amount associated for consumers and what they're willing to pay for a good or service, and that's a factor in demand, and we'll get into that a bit more. So we're going to talk about demand curve first. So that's a graph that shows the change in price of a good or service, and how changes in that price affect the quantity that consumers purchase or the market purchases. So we've got a little graph here. Now, bear with me. This graph is super simple, straight line. Your actual demand curve is going to look something like this, I would imagine, for this product. But we're going to use a straight line for now. So we'll turn that off. So this basic idea, the premise is the higher the price, we have price here on the y-axis, and right now it's $400. The higher the price, the fewer quantity demanded, right? Consumers aren't going to buy a bunch of boxes because they either can't afford them, they don't value the product that high, right? Kind of makes sense. So the opposite is also true. Lower price, higher quantity likely demanded. It's more affordable. Maybe it's cheaper and people like the product for the sake of Paldea Evolve booster boxes. I think everyone here would probably buy a bunch if they were $75 or cheaper, right? If they were $400, probably nobody, except, I don't know, maybe someone's in a market somewhere else in the world, outside North America, Europe, major hubs that don't have great access to product, and maybe they're more willing to pay a higher price because it's harder to get. All right, so that's basic, right? We understand that. Higher the price, the fewer demanded. Lower the price, more likely the higher number of quantity demanded. So supply, you also get supply for the most part. It's a word thrown around a lot in this hobby and in YouTube's. It's simply the amount of a good or service available for purchase. And we need to start thinking about that key sort of part, available, because Pokemon can print 1 million boxes of Paldea Evolved, and that's great. That doesn't mean the supply is 1 million boxes. They're not all on the market, are they? Or stores maybe only have half of theirs listed or 3/4 listed. Maybe people have bought boxes and they're sitting on them for future value. You see distributors even. Like I've heard distributors sitting on Sun and Moon sets and charging close to market rate for those boxes. So it's the amount of a good or service available. Another thing that affects availability, you see in the second point there, is the willingness. So are they willing to sell it for what the price is right now? It's also their ability to sell. And that's more applicable to services. So think about grading. We submit cards to PSA. There's maybe a backlog like there was in COVID. And that was an unfortunate thing where they didn't actually have the ability to deliver the service in a reasonable time frame, but they were still selling it. Of course, they don't charge you until the end, which is nice. But people were without cards for a year and a half, so not sure that's not sure they really had the ability to sell that good or service, but they did it. But that's also another thing. Say they flip, they don't have a lot of cards coming in for grading. They're going to say, oh, if they said, I'm going to sell them all for $1 each, we're going to grade cards for $1 each, they would be flooded. Millions of cards come in. Everyone wants their cards graded. They would have no ability to fulfill that, right? There's no way they're going to turn around that influx in demand in a reasonable time frame. So they're never going to drop the price that low, right? It's an extreme example, but that's how we sort of talk about ability. So they're going to price it at a point where they get consistent submissions, they're working enough, consistent work for their staff, predictable revenue streams, things like that. And then you'll see those dips in prices if they feel like they need a little extra juice to keep the employees working and keep the revenue consistent. So supply curve to that point is the same as a demand curve. It just shows how the change in price of a good or service will affect the quantity that sellers or suppliers are willing to supply. So in red is our supply curve. And it's not going to look like that either, but we're going to use straight lines for now, but we're going to say it's probably something like that, right? They'll sell everything on hand if it skyrockets to $400 because they're tripling their money more. It's great. But for this, this example, we're just going to use a straight line. Higher the price, the more they're willing to sell. Simple as that. They got higher margins, really quick return on investment. Lower the price though, they're probably selling fewer. Right? Say they spend, maybe they're $90. Let's say retailers spend $90 a box. Why would they want to sell at 50 or 40? Right? They'd have to be sitting there for a while. They had to have really poor cash flow. And then they'd have some really hot items that they want to get into their store. So they're going to ship out some of the fire sale products of stuff that doesn't move well. But there is really a threshold down in this area where they're probably never going to drop below, right? They don't want to take such a huge loss on that product. So one thing to keep note of on both of these curves, take the pen here. So on the demand curve, any single point on the demand curve, right? All these are just single points. It relates to a price and a quantity. Okay, so at 50 boxes, this is saying the demand for 50 boxes, they're willing to pay $310. Okay, that's all this is going to really tell us. But each individual point is quantity demanded, and it's not demand. Demand is the curve. Okay, same thing goes for supply. Any point along these lines, it's going to be quantity supplied, not supply or total supply, right? They have to be available. They have to have the ability to sell it, and they have to be willing to sell it at that price, that quantity and that price. So here, for example, call it what, 120 boxes, a little over $200, right? So far, so good. We'll turn that off. So that brings us to use both of these curves now. And what happens when they intersect is you get market equilibrium. And so in a perfect market, you know, that it'll just happen. And that's where demand meets supply. There's no surpluses, there's no shortages. Price and quantity demanded matches price and quantity supplied. And that's the idea of the equilibrium. Typically, it's the only point that the curves will intersect. I think, and an econ major might be able to shed light on this. I think there are curves where there will be multiple intersections, but that's out of my realm of expertise. So we've got that. We've got supply, we've got demand. And this circle in the middle at the intersection is our equilibrium. And so we're going to just assume that at $200 a box, quantity supplied and quantity demanded is going to match up at around 105, 110 boxes. Okay? So, but what if, whoops. But what if suppliers had 275 boxes listed? And there were, 150 boxes listed at 275 bucks. Right? But at that price, what's demanded? Closer to 75 boxes, right? About half as much. So how does price change in that? Like, how do we get equilibrium if everything's listed at this price, but the demand doesn't match that? So that's when we talk about forces towards the equilibrium. So you've got shortages and you've got surpluses. You've heard both of those words probably. I'm sure people love to throw those around. So let's do a bit of an example here. So here we go. We got 150 ballpark supply, right? A little under 300 bucks a box. And this many people, call it 60 or 60 boxes, right? That is what will sell at this price. So now what do we have? We have 150, right? Supplied to the market, minus, we're going to work backwards here, the 60 that were purchased by the people that valued them at $300. What does that equal? 90. So there's 90 boxes that are being supplied that there are no buyers for. So what happens is this side, the seller, supplier side, is going to have to start ratcheting down prices to capture these people, right? And the idea is that they would ratchet it down until whatever their point is there, where it matched, product is flowing normally or consistently, both parties are happy, kind of, or content, or right? That makes some sense. So that is a surplus, right? More supply than there is demand. So this area here is your surplus. All right. So 160 boxes ballpark, really. So what's the result? It's going to be a surplus, right? We're above the intersection of the lines or the curves. And supply far outweighs demand. And you could say that that's the case for some Scarlet and Violet product right now. Okay. But now we come here. And suppliers have a bunch of this product. Oh, what a great line. I know the hiccups too. We'll call it 60, 70 boxes, right? So they'll supply 60 or 70 boxes at 110 bucks. And they're just getting eaten up. Maybe they're 151 UPCs or Charizard UPCs. Ooh. And they're just getting eaten alive, right? And they can't keep up. But maybe they're sitting on reserves. Or maybe the Pokemon company is seeing that this stuff's flooding out and they can't keep that up. So what's going to happen? We're going to have forces, hopefully more production, or retailers or distributors seeing how quick that these things move. And they're going to increase the price to sell those additional units that they have, right? Because they're selling out like hotcakes at the current price. Still got some quantity in the warehouse or something, or Pokemon company's got some in their warehouses and they're going to send out some waves to distributors, things like that. And so that's going to raise the price, right? At this, we had a demand of 150, whereas they could only supply 60 to 70 boxes. Let's call it 70, right? So 150. I'm using my mouse for this, so that's why it's terrible. It's 80. Right? So there's a shortage of 80 units at that price. The market just can't supply enough. It doesn't have the ability or the willingness to sell 150 units at that price. But they'll sell more at a higher price. And so creeps up until we get to equilibrium. Cool. Cool. So this is your shortage. Turn that off for now. But so one thing we got to take into consideration, and this is kind of why you see the price spike at release or pre-order, and for most things, and they go down, right? And then they eventually level off, and then they're kind of like this, and they look like a stock market or an index chart, and snaking their way up a bit. So we have to keep in mind that these forces to play out when a product is released, or especially in pre-order, is we need to wait for those to settle before we can establish some sort of an equilibrium, right? Because those things are going to take time. All sales aren't instant, right? Leaks come out of what cards are in the set over time. So maybe pre-orders slowly build. Set comes out, everyone's buying it so they can make a YouTube video. Like apparently got a subscriber while I was recording. Cool. So yeah, these forces take a while, and we need to let that play out. Some products, they go like that, right? Like a Van Gogh Pikachu, the supply just wasn't enough. Just a huge shortage for the first while. And so that's one of the few ones that was, right? And now it's coming down because the 100K or more in Europe have already made their way over to North America, things like that. So key there, more often than not, we can wait. We don't need to pre-order unless we want to make content on release day or sell on release day. That's fine if you're a business. But as an investor, we can wait. But if we have an equilibrium in these two curves, then does that mean that that relationship is always the same? Well, it doesn't, because there's all these other factors in the world that'll change the curves. It won't change the individual quantity price relationship necessarily, right? They're going to change the curves as a whole. They're going to give us a new equilibrium, going to give us new curves and a new relationship. So factors that change demand, I mean, you can guess them. I've got some listed here. So income being disposable, so demand side, right? COVID happens, people work from home or whatever. People have more disposable income because they're not going out as much. Maybe they're saving money because they're not driving to work, or maybe they're getting government stimulus checks, things like that. Tons of disposable income just rocketed in to Pokemon. Population, and on this side, we're not really talking about world population. We're talking about the population in the hobby, or the collecting space, or the game playing space. Because world population could grow and the population in the hobby could decrease. I mean, those aren't necessarily related, but you would think overall, as the world population grows, population of any of its hobbies would increase, but it's not perfect. Taste change. Watch any video, right? Tag teams were all the rage recently. Sun and Moon, huge spikes. You had Japanese waifus and Japanese, just huge spikes for a while. And there are reasons for that, and we won't get into those, but so that's also a factor, right? Those increased demand. Related goods, sleeves. You could use grading in this. If the cost of grading goes up, I think people are probably not spending as much on Pokemon, because either one, they have to use their Pokemon money for the grading services, so they have less left over. But two, if those go more expensive, maybe I'm just not as interested in the hobby because I don't want to grade anymore. Maybe I was an avid grader, but now it's like $40 to grade a card. Don't really want to do it anymore. Substitutes, One Piece, Magic, and even other hobbies to a lesser extent. What people do with disposable income is it's up to them. And if tastes change, that doesn't mean they change within the hobby. They could just change, period. They could go to video games. They could go into sports cards, whatever, right? Tons of different hobbies out there, tons of things to do. And with how easily accessible stuff is online, that can change on a dime. And then expectations, you think reprints are coming, rumors that there's no reprints, or rumors that Van Gogh's short printed, and speculation, and videos from big streamers and stuff like that might fuel those. So let's do an example and we'll show you sort of how this moves. The Evil Cabal shills Paldea Evolve, saying it is the best set since Team Up. It is. Trust me, I'm shilling to my 40 subscribers right now. Everyone's just like, oh, wow. Well, now that I look at it, yeah. That's banging. Is that Magikarp? Okay. Iono? Damn. Furry boys. But you see, once that starts getting pumped, demand's increasing. But demands can't move this way, right? If demand is just increasing, that means we're selling more, but it can't follow this line. Surely, right? Because as these retailers and distributors keep selling their Paldea Evolve, they're not ratcheting the price down. Why would they keep ratcheting the price down if they kept selling? Right? There's a surplus at this level, but they're not supplying that, right? So here, even though quantity's being changed, it's not accounting for everything, right? It's just on that curve. So what we do is we shift it to the right and we shift it up. I could shift it straight up and it could end up in the same place. And I could shift it right and it would end up in the same place because this is a straight line. But anyway, I won't get into why you shift it right and up. Anyway, new equilibrium is created. Derp. Let's check that out. So this is our new equilibrium from this one. So before we had 105, 110 boxes at a little over 200 bucks a box. And that would have been our equilibrium. Demand has shifted. People want more and more and more. And now we're here. What has the result been? Well, typically on that previous curve, if quantity demanded kept climbing, the related price would have been much lower. But that's not the case. It's higher. The price is higher. It's 200 to 275 a box. And they want another 40 boxes or something. Look at that. All this space. Right? It's just an increase in demand. Retailers are selling out. They're going to keep rolling it out. There's less on the market, less from distributors, and their price is going to climb up because the distributors are starting to capitalize on those increases in market prices. The retailers have to sell it at a profit for it to make any sense, and margins suck as is. And then that's got to be passed on to the consumer. Prices going up. Okay. Does that make sense? But what if it goes the other way? Okay. Cabal says, Paldea Evolve, Scarlet and Violet Air suck. I think most of them don't seem particularly fond of it, but Gray Borders suck. Yeah, they do, but the Air is good. So people see that, they start crapping on it. They stop buying it. There's videos of them burning it. Joking. Chris Klein. So the demand curve is going to shift left. It's going to shift down. Just the opposite. Not up and right. It's shifting down and left. And that gives us this change. Okay, so when I had to edit to change this, so when we highlight this area, this is like a net loss to the industry or the market, Pokemon in this example. So that whole highlighted shaded area is just a net loss to the hobby in terms of like cash flow, money changing hands, things like that. I have to fill airtime with an ad now so go buy Tim Hortons coffee because it's terrible. And yeah. So what about the other side, the supply side? What changes? It's not really the same stuff that necessarily changes the supply side. It can have effects, but it's not usually the same. It's usually the sort of almost the inverse, the opposite side of the coin. So we're looking at input costs, paper, ink, printing machines, labor, stuff like that. Innovation, so more efficient printing processes, maybe with better quality control. They're churning out more cards at a cheaper price. Or the opposite can happen. You could have machinery that's getting old and decreasing labor force, maybe in that specialty, things like that. Prices of related goods. So that would be similar in grading, sleeves, stuff like that. Maybe even shipping. Shipping more of an input cost, but if it's on the buyer side, we won't talk about it. Number of producers. So, it could be just number of printing facilities, or it could be number of Pokemon and TCGs across the world. Maybe they start printing in all these other languages, things like that. And the expectations of the producers. And so we'll call it Pokemon for now. If they are forecasting demand and it's not looking as strong, they're probably ratcheting down a little bit. And that's been said about Scarlet Violet. So reprints flood the market while they evolve everywhere. Market supply increases, right? And it's not really this, is it? Because if products flooding the market, there's not demand there to support it, right? So it goes to the right and it goes down. So we get a new equilibrium here. Terrible lines, but you get the idea. So earlier they were selling $200 a box. They're moving decent quantity. Now this wave's come out. Well, crap. We gotta sell more of this product. Okay, let's reduce our margins a bit and clear some of this because it's not as popular, right? So now our quantity sold is higher, but we've lost these margins. Okay. So people keep opening it because they're hyping it. Cabal's going nuts. Pokerev's doing case openings, trying to find Iono. Still can't find her. People flood. They start wanting Iono, right? Okay. Stuff's getting open, but no more's coming. It's sold out everywhere. So what's going on? Well, that means we're going to shift our supply curve to the left and up. And that results in higher price, lower quantity. So we're gaining this and losing this. And then there's a way you can calculate sort of the margins here. And if this is beneficial to the supplier side, things like that, what the relative value is. But we won't go that far. And someone can explain it better than I can. So yeah. And that's kind of, I guess, sort of imagery of how these things sort of play out in a very basic way. So, come to the end. Consider the factors that impact the curves and how they impact the curves. You can map it out just on a little piece of paper or something, right? Map it out and see how that equilibrium price shifts. You make your own predictions, but we got to remember, and people talk about this all the time, they don't exactly say why other than the obvious observations or anecdotes we have, but wait. You're not a business that needs to sell sealed product at release. Wait. See what happens. Like the 151 PC ETBs. I didn't buy first wave. I got second. Got my case. I'm over the moon because they printed just enough that it didn't really impact the market price. And when I pre-order Paldean Fates first wave, I don't know why I did it in the first place. So I just break even on it, and I'm like, I don't want to open it. But yeah, wait, more often than not, right? It's the not the. So wait, give it my time period. Maybe about 4 to sometimes 3 months, but 4 to 6 month range for singles, unless I can get them like 30% or lower from market price. And sealed product closer to a year is what I'm looking at. Other than getting Paradox at like $90 a box the other day. That's a good price, Canadian at least. Can't find that cheaper in Canada. $120 a box and free shipping. So yeah, play it out on your paper, learn how its curves work and how they move, and maybe make some assumptions or some predictions about what you think the forces are and how they're changing, and maybe add them up. How many of these situations are changing under, total circumstances? So let's say on the demand side, we're going to say, okay, we'll say it's going to get less popular. Okay, that obviously hurts demand. Say you think the number of streamers and stuff are going to hurt that popularity. That also is going to hurt. And go through the sections and list what could happen and what you think is the trend, and see if you expect it to decrease. And then wait, see what happens, and then go make a decision. Revisit, see where you got wrong, or what parts on Reddit weren't right, things like that. Okay, that's all for this one.